Betrayal. It's a deal breaker. I know that 99% is practically perfect. And if you bring a report card home and every letter is like 99% an A, that's going to hang on the fridge. I understand that there are a lot of places where 99% looks really good, and it is in those particular places. But what if your mate's only 99% loyal to you? I challenge you to run the math. Because in a 50-year marriage, a 99% loyal mate spent 18 full 24-hour days in the arms of another. That's not perfect, is it? That's kind of bad. And so as you look at things, you want to be rational and you want to be realistic about where they fall. Our relationship with God is a marriage. And He doesn't want us just 99% of the time. He doesn't want to give us time in the devil's arms, if you would. In James 4:4, he says, "You adulterers and adulteresses, don't you know that friendship with the world means to enmity with God?" God is very clear. He wants our heart. In Exodus 34:14, if you read that, it says His name is jealous. That's one of the names of God. His name is jealous. So God has been faithful to us all this time for centuries and centuries since the creating of mankind. And so what we want to know is our loyalty. Is it just going to look good on paper? Because 99% looks good. But in practical application, 99% isn't good enough. We want to give Him all our heart, all our mind, all our soul, to talk about Matthew 22:37. So let's talk about the jealousy of God. His name is jealous, and that jealousy is very appropriate. And I think it's pretty much easy to explain. So let me explain it this way. I want you to imagine you got a married couple, and somebody is making inappropriate advances at one of them, and the other couple goes, oh well, no big deal. If your mate was indifferent about somebody making passes at you, would you go, oh, that is so sweet? I just think that is so wonderful. Or would you be upset? We wouldn't admire the person that was being indifferent. But if that mate was jealous and wanted to protect something, because that marriage relationship is something sacred, and he's decided or she's decided they'll protect it, now you'll look at that and go, why, yes, they have every right to be jealous. They should be jealous. They ought to be in there fighting for their mate. God is our God. We are the bride of Christ. There ought to be some jealousy there. And that His name is jealous is not an insecurity on His part, any more than a mate being jealous of their mate is an insecurity. Actually, you'll think about it, it's an expression of love as we reach out to protect something that is truly sacred. And those relationships we're talking about are. And our spiritual covenant with God is a marriage. So we put Christ on in baptism. We entered into a covenant. The only odd thing about that is in our culture today, the idea of covenants just doesn't play like it did 2,000 years ago. Maybe we would do better with the word contract. I think that word might play a little better. But we entered into a contract, and we don't want that contract violated. We said to love and to hold, to cherish, to honor, and all of those things that we said at the wedding. And I expect that to happen. That's a contract we entered into, or a marriage covenant if you'd prefer. And likewise, we entered into a contract with God. And we said, we're all yours. We present our lives to you. We're going to walk in your footsteps. We'll take up our cross and follow you. And He has every right to be jealous for that. In 2 Peter 9, He tells us He doesn't want any to perish. So when we do get messed up in things, He is coming back to redeem that relationship. And if you can't come up with a better, I don't think you can come up with a better example of His love than Calvary. That's why John 3:16 is one of the most popular verses of all time. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. There it is. That is an expression of love that is hard. I don't think you can top it. I think you'd be really hard pressed to find anything that comes near equal to it. And that is the love that God has for you and I. And so having given Himself, poured out His blood, purchasing the church with His own blood, and we having entered into that covenant relationship in that blood, He has every right to be jealous. If you'd have paid that price for something, you'd be jealous too, wouldn't you? Then we have our quiet rivals. A lot of things that compete for God's place in the heart. And they're out there. And I know there's the obvious. You can say liquor, drugs, alcohol, gambling. You can name a lot of things like that. I really don't want to go that direction right at this moment. In Matthew 6:24, he says you can't serve two masters. And the fact of the matter is you can't. Now, a lot of people think they can, but when you try to serve two masters, that's just got you straddling the fence, and you got one foot on one side and one foot on the other. And we know straddling the fence doesn't work. That's all Matthew 6:24 is saying, is don't sit on the fence. You cannot serve two masters. You'll love the one and you'll hate the other. But here are some of the things that we fall into. We fall into career. But you got to have a job, right? There's nothing immoral about having a career. There's nothing immoral about pursuing that. Be turning over to 1 Corinthians 10:23. So you got to have that, and that is part of our responsibility. In fact, Paul would write, he who doesn't work, he said, who doesn't provide for his own, has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. So career is really important, but what can happen is we can start getting a subtle shift where career takes the seat, takes the throne that belongs to God. Same thing with family. Family is a wonderful thing, and it's a great thing. I just love watching family. I've loved being part of family all my life. I just think it's just wonderful. There's nothing better, if you ask me, there's nothing better than a good, healthy family. Whether we're talking about Christmas or Thanksgiving or birthday parties or just insignificant times where you just get together and have fun and do stuff, family is the top of it. But what happens if we take family too far? Family can start to compete for God. Well, I'd be there Wednesday night, but you know, the ball game meets on Wednesday night. I'd really like to do this, but my kids need to. And all of a sudden, the kids become an excuse for not serving God. Now, I have a preacher friend who has the right answer to that. It's a little rough, but he looks at the parent who's using their kids as an excuse for not being at church and said, well, what if God just took your excuse away? Oh, no, I don't want that. Let's not use God's gifts as an excuse to avoid God. But family comes in, and it's a quiet competitor for the throne of God. Money, of course, that might overlap with career and what have you, but you've got to have money. I don't know how many times I've said it's expensive to live in America. Man, the day in America back when a guy could go to work at the factory and he could work on the line and just do his 8 hours and do whatever job he had and still provide groceries for a wife and buy a house and 3 kids and a car, those days are gone. That don't happen anymore. It's expensive to live in America. And so you've got 2-income households. You've got people where a person has 2 or 3 jobs and they're just trying to keep their head above water, and your heart goes out to them. But at some point you've got to go, hey, what's important here? God or money? And recreation? Oh my. Let me not get myself started because I do have to get out of here before noon. Recreation. We are the most recreated people ever. And it's not that recreation is immoral. I would say most of it is not immoral. But when it starts encroaching upon your time with God, we got a problem. So 1 Corinthians 10:23, all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful, but not all things edify. Look, just because you can look at an activity and go, well, this is not a sin. There's nothing wrong with X. Now, you fill in your X for whatever. There's nothing wrong with looking at reels on Facebook. Most of them there's not. There's nothing wrong with going to a movie with your family and friends for most of the cases. There's nothing wrong with going on a camping trip. There's nothing wrong with fill in your blank. What did Paul say? Not all things are profitable. Not all things edify. And when we start crossing that line, we have quiet rivals. We have something that wants our heart, and God wants all of our heart. Remember Matthew 22:37, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. So these things are not inherently evil, and that's where they trip us up. Because you can get involved into them to a point. It's absolutely okay. It's the overindulgence. It's the over-obsession with some things. So it's that little shift of the heart that gets us in trouble. Not the overt activity, but the shift of the heart. Now, if you look back there at Matthew 10:37, he says, he who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Nothing wrong with having a mother or father. You got to have one to get here, right? Nothing wrong with having children. That's what most of us love to do. It's not that you have it. The thing is when the heart starts shifting. And we can all tell stories of people who were faithful to the church until their babies went astray. And when one or more of their children went astray, they decided the church just didn't matter anymore. You really don't have to do all that to get to heaven. And they let their children take the throne of their heart instead of letting God. And so that's the tricky part, is watching for that subtle shift. Your rebellion or betrayal is not always an open rebellion. Sometimes it can just be a real quiet little shifting of priorities. And the person on the outside can't look in and go, well, that's a sin. And that thing's wrong right there, and that's evil. It's not like robbing banks and selling illegal drugs. You can pretty much name those. It's an attitude of the heart. And that's something that's real hard to see from the outside, isn't it? So we want loyalty to the truth, which means we're going to be loyal to His Word. John 14:15 says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Christ said, Matthew 4:4, man doesn't live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And thus Paul would tell us to be diligent to show ourselves approved to God. Workmen need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And so we come back to the book, to the book, to the book. Now, I'm going to stray just a very short moment. I love that. And I love that because it's on you. It's not on me. I realize we're going to have a teacher and we need a preacher and we're going to do this in some fashion or another. But in the end, it's you and it's your responsibility. And if you're dealing with the book and you're relating to the book and you're learning the book, sure, we're going to have conversations, ask questions, but that is your relationship with God. I am not the go-between. I do not want to be the go-between. There is only one between you and God, and that is Jesus Christ, not the eldership, not deacons, and not the preacher. It is you, Christ, God. That's the lineup we want. Now, that means you're going to have to know His Word and be loyal to His Word. But you know what David said? Thy Word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Yes, that's what we want. So biblical love, it's more than just this warm feeling about, I kind of love God and I want to be close to God and I just love the idea of God. I hope you have those warm feelings, but there is depth to it. A loyal heart is looking for, how do I honor God? Matthew 7:21, it is he who does the will of the Father who enters. So that's what I want to be doing, not looking for loopholes. And this is where the deceitfulness of the heart comes into play, because language has flexibility. Man, we can play with some things. We can twist some words around. And before you know it, we can make something that is totally sin look right. They do it all the time. It's 1 Corinthians 6:9, where in modern translations it says, homosexuals will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, people don't like that. That's not a popular message today. And they go, well, that's not what that really means. I'm like, well, tell me what it really means then. And then the psychobabble that answers that question is just too hard to even get your head around, to even mock. It's just craziness. We don't look for loopholes. Incidentally, that 1 Corinthians 6:9 passage says there's some other people not going to heaven, and they're not as near offensive as our taste as the one I mentioned. So you don't look for loopholes. You're looking for the pattern of words that were delivered to us. That's 2 Timothy 1:13. You want to follow that sound pattern of words. And that was 2,000 years ago. It's not an update. It's not a modernization. It's not the 2026 version of Christianity. It's that original first century. And so Paul would say in 2 Thessalonians 2:15, stand fast. Hold the traditions which you were taught. That's 2,000 years old stuff. So that's what we're looking for. When we say loyalty to truth, that's what we're talking about. But the temptation is to modify. The temptation is to rationalize. And that's a common temptation. It's always been there. And if mankind goes another 1,000 years, when it's 3026, people will be saying, well, that book's 3,000 years old. We need to get up to date. Not if you want to practice what Jesus taught. Because Christ said, heaven and earth pass away, but my words will never pass away. Christ said the words that he spoke will judge us in the last day. Let's go over to Galatians 1, 6, 9. I'm going to attempt not to comment much, but I just want to read it. Galatians 1, we'll start at verse 6. I'm amazed that you are so quickly deserting him who called you by the grace of Christ to a different gospel. Okay, pause. First comment. It's not brand new. People have been drifting since the first century. Verse 7. Which is really not another, only there are some who are disturbing you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to what we have preached to you, he is to be accursed. As we have said before, I say now again, if any man is preaching to you a gospel contrary to what you have received, he is to be accursed. When we talk about a loyal heart to the truth, we're talking about getting back to some book, chapter, and verse. I want to be able to open up a page and put my finger on a verse. Now, I understand there's a little more to it, but let's leave it there for the moment. Loyalty to the Word is loyalty to God. And Christ said, if they listen to you, they listen to me. If they don't listen to you, they don't listen to me. But if they don't listen to me, they didn't listen to the one that sent me. And so it's all back to that book, chapter, and verse foundation. That's the only way I know. Now, I do understand that there's some people who think they have a special woo-woo connection with some ethereal something or another that feeds them information. Problem is, God's not the author of confusion. Whatever spirit they're listening to isn't the spirit of God if it contradicts what the Spirit wrote in that book. The danger of drifting, of course, it's usually never one big single event. On rare occasion, yes, it is. But what happens normally is it's just a little bitty drift. Nobody gives it much thought. It sits there a while and it's just a little bit more drift and nobody gives it much thought. And if you catch the drift in the beginning, let's say the boat's at the dock and it's just drifted out a foot or so. Okay, I can still reach that one and pull that in. But if nobody's been paying attention and that boat's drifted out into the middle of the lake, I don't know about you, but I can't swim that far. I can't reach out and grab that one. We've got a whole other situation. And that is partly the problem where we're at today now, is look at some of the ideas that float for religion in our community and how far it has drifted away from that book, chapter, and verse pattern. It is just miles and miles off. And now we're trying to correct that. It would have been so much easier could we have done it when that drifting boat was just 6 inches from the dock. But I can't fix that now, can I? It's already drifted so much further. And all you got to do to drift is just to be negligent. Well, I'll get to my reading later. I'll get to my prayer later. I'll get to my devotional study later. And before long, later just kind of fades away into the mist of busyness. And somebody says, I remember 6 months ago when I started reading the Bible. I remember 2 years ago I tried that. But they drifted so far away, the odds of them coming back are pretty thin. Now they can, but it's just pretty thin. Our loyalty requires our attention, our intention, and our effort. You got to put them all in there. Probably we could put a little bit more on that list. The problem is drifting just doesn't feel all that alarming at first, does it? Until it really crosses the line. So think of it as a river. And the boat's just drifting on the river. Everybody's happy and they're comfortable. Nobody realizes there's some deadly waterfall coming up. And all of a sudden when they get close to the waterfall, everybody's panicking and doing everything they can. But then it's almost too late, not too late. Now, I think that analogy serves our religious community quite well. There have been churches that let things drift let things drift. I'm talking about in the moral department. And then when they were about to go off the cliff, all of a sudden, some people wanted to backpedal, and some people wanted to go on over the cliff. And we have churches in our own community that have made major changes because of that very idea. You got to catch it. What did Barney Fife always say? Nip it in the bud. That's what you got to do. You got to nip it in the bud. So the longer it remains unattended, the worse it's going to get. Our loyalty is not accidental. It is something we do on purpose. It is very intentional, and we do put effort into it. So it's that consistent self-discipline that we keep bringing ourselves back. Now, when we have that passion, and this is what we want to do with our life, it's not that big of an issue, because when you catch yourself drifting off, you go, well, I don't want to go over there. Ooh, I messed up. Let me get back online here. And when we catch it from within, we're really doing good. Because most of us are not going to listen to somebody who tries to talk to us from outside. I can't explain it. I just know the reality of it. It is really, really, really rare when you walk up to somebody and you go, brother and sister, we need to talk about something because it looks like it's offline in your life, and you talk to them and they go, you know, you're right. I need to look at that, don't I? What happens most of the time? Well, you just don't understand what's going on. If you had been in my life, you would understand why. And boy, they start climbing your tree. And what do you learn real quick? I ain't talking to nobody. Everybody says, if I'm doing something wrong, I want you to come and tell me. You better send me an invitation in writing so I can go look. You said come over here. Otherwise, that's a scary place to go. So loyalty, it's more than just avoiding sin. It includes deliberately, underline deliberately drawing near to God. James said, draw near to God, and He'll draw near to you. So we're going to live with eternity in view. Our life is just a vapor, and it is. And it's amazing. I wish I could have understood that at 26 or at 32 or 45. Somewhere after 50, you start going, whoa, wait a minute. I'm past the halfway market, and I don't know why they call 50 middle age, because very few people make it to 100, but that's what they start calling you, right? And then you get on down the line, as some of us are, and you're going, wow, that went quick, didn't it? It did. Life's short. It's just hard to see it when you're on the younger side of life, and I don't mean the young people, any problem there. We all had that. But when you're growing up, you need to start learning to lay up treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy. Because you lay up your treasures here, it's not going to be pretty in the end. Colossians 3:1-2 tells us to set our mind on heaven. That is the number one priority. This is what we want sitting on the throne, is that priority of spirituality. Now, I'm not saying you can't go do other things. We've been having fun looking at that picture of that big old turkey Archer shot, and I think it's totally cool. I like the idea. You know, we just do all kinds of fun things, but those things are secondary. They're tertiary. They're on down the list. You can enjoy life. You can enjoy some good barbecue, wherever you think that happens to be, some good entertainment. But God's always going to be number one. And none of the things that come on the list further down can be in competition or violate what's number one. Number one is always number one. So we're going to set our mind on heaven, because this little vapor, so I'm giving it up for heaven. Okay. I get 70 to 80 years. That'd be my Psalms 90:10. And then what do I get in exchange for presenting my body a living sacrifice? Somebody say eternity. How do you balance eternity? 70, 80 years, and I'm going to really take care of myself. I'm going to get 90 to 100 years over here. Woohoo. And then I walk into heaven, I have eternity. How long is that? How does that even compare to 100 years? And if we get our spirituality right, we might start thinking, I ain't staying here 100 years. You mean I get to go to heaven at 80 and you want me to stay here 20 years longer? You're not extending my deployment. I want to go home to glory. So we sacrifice this vapor for eternity. And that's not self-neglect. Folks, that's clarity. That's knowing what I was created for. I was created for God's glory, and you were created for God's glory. So loyalty, we're going to hold the things of this world lightly. I want you to still have fun with the things of the world, whether it's babies or grandbabies, or hunting or fishing or thrifting or whatever it is you like to do. You enjoy your cooking, your barbecue. Now, when you barbecue, invite me over. Well, I want you to enjoy doing what you do, but I want you to hold it lightly because you're going to let go of it. That day's coming. And I want your priority, the thing you really held on to with all your might, to be heaven and eternity. And that's how you step into victory. So loyalty, it's more than just 99%. Matthew 22:37, you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. Not 99%, all of it when it comes to God. Mankind, man, we betrayed God so long ago, I won't even try to do that. Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fallen short to the glory of God. I believe it's Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death, but God pursued our reconciliation. He said, I'm not going to let them go. I'm going to get every one of them back that I can. And so his jealousy, it's there. Because the Bible said his name is jealous. But it's an intense love for us. He wants us. So you guard your heart. Now I said against moral distractions. I meant it to say it that way. Now obviously you guard your heart against immoral distractions. But the moral ones, the things that are not overtly sin that can eat away time that you could use drawing closer to God, you learn to manage those two because your life here is really brief. And eternity, it is forever. So Joshua 24:15, you know that one, of course. Choose you this day who you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So the idols that sneak in and try to take our heart, they rarely announce themselves loudly. They quietly take the seat that God once held. And then we kind of wonder what happened. It usually is a slow transition. If God is sitting on the throne of your heart where he belongs, then you defend it, you protect it. You be jealous of that also. If for some reason you've let God drift off of the seat and something else take it, you need to make a change. If we can help you in a public way, let us do so. While together we stand and